Good day to you, partner. I'm Guy, and I can already tell that I'll be your best friend in this forsaken camp.
Hey guys, Wheat Solo here, aka the Simp King. I'm not even going to try to hide it anymore, okay? I'm all in Team Zon. That is not true. And in fact, I have some pretty important information for all summoners, especially necromancers, because funny enough, necromancers seem to get around it a little bit. But what is this video about? I thought I wasn't going to make more early game / mid game budget Zon videos. And last video I actually said I thought this was mid-game gear, and I think some people would like that definition, but then I thought about it a little more, and I would still call it pretty early mid-game. I'm not saying it's like BIS. In-game does not mean you have all your auras, okay? I hope everyone watching this understands how rich you can get in PD2, even as a pretty casual player. So, like, in-game is, like, the bare minimum for in-game would be you have every single necessary item and at least, like, the necessary core breakpoints. Like, maybe you're missing some percents, right? Maybe more than just percents, maybe missing one socket, but you have the FCR breakpoint you need, etc. And again, that's not BIS. BIS would be, you know, absolutely perfect, or, you know, maybe a couple % off will give you that. But here I am making a video with almost exactly the same gear. Now, is anything different? By the way, I don't know why I stayed and killed this guy. I was kind of surprised that I couldn't proc amp on him. And there we go, and he dies. But I'm making this because somebody in Necro Chat has been having struggles with fire golems. And my only answer is he's not playing it good enough. And I don't know what else to say. I've had this happen before. By the way, my mouse does disconnect at certain points in this video. It probably cost me a little bit of time. This is a sub 8. Now, I posted a sub 9 Lost Temple with slightly higher density. It had Shrieking Terrors, which is a worse mod. And I think I counted the map event. The map event's at the end, so I don't know if I actually counted that in the timer. I think I didn't because like I came back to it because, like I said, I wasn't even sure what was going on. But the reason why I wanted to do another Lost Temple with, you know, similar enough density, I know it's slower, I'm sorry, it's hard. And also what's weird is I wouldn't say this map is as dense, but I'm sure people who've played this game have seen the thing where it's like sometimes you have a low roll density, but it's very high, and then you have a high roll density and it seems to be fairly low. That definitely seems to have been, the chances of that happening seems to be lower in modern seasons, and that probably has to do with the way they fixed the way mobs spawn. But it's still, to me, I don't know, by my eye, I'll run like a 100 density map, and I feel like it's fat, and I'll run a 200 density map, and I'm like, this place could use a little more people in this town, you know what I'm saying? But this guy is running Fire Golem. Sorry, this is going to be a fairly, well, another one of the famous Wheat Solo Skelly King rants. He's going very slow, and he actually has pretty good gear, and I think he complains more about his gear than he should, because I think his gear is actually pretty good. And he's playing Fire Golems, and it's like you can get better at this game, and even if you are good at this game, try and take that with some amount of humility. I think most of the power of this game, as someone else said, I think around the same conversation, is knowledge. Is this game has a very wide, maybe it's not super deep, but it's super wide and it's pretty deep. And that's what makes, you know, this game so fascinating to this day, is how a game 20 years ago has such a breadth of knowledge that isn't actually that narrow. I think it matches both of those points. I still learn things to this day about the original game mechanics, and I think that's really cool. And so what did I do with my summons on is, I was also thinking about Topwood complaining about my first map clear, saying I was, you know, going too slow. Now, one of the problems was already rectified, and that was switching to a bow. That alone did so much good. Yeah, my mouse disconnected again. Like, I don't know. It probably cost me like 30 seconds in this map. But by the way, the only time I go slow is whenever I see aura stacks. Honestly, this pack wouldn't have been that much of a problem. One of the things about aura stacks is that they affect the base damage of a monster. If you look at that room, although I think magic damage is incredibly dangerous, and I'm actually super afraid of Unravelers, I have been basically since Necromancers switched from having max vitality to max energy, I started to realize how broken mobs based around magic damage are, because you can't really resist that damage. Yes, you can get a little bit of MDR, but it's usually negligible amounts unless you're actually trying to run it. Of course, there is martyrdom, and I'm actually like all in on the martyrdom train. Like I said, I was going to have some Necromancer information. When I finally go back to Necromancer, I actually think martyrdom might be better than Boneflame now. They both can roll +4. The martyrdom, you lose the PDR and the res, but usually res and PDR aren't that much of an issue with a Necromancer. You can get it in other spots. And the martyrdom gives you a fat amount of FHR, which is a super core stat for Necromancers that can be a challenge to get. And it also gives you curse resistance, which is like the future. Okay? So, Unravelers are dangerous, but their damage isn't affected by concentration. I don't think. Okay? Actually, I know that some of the map the map mobs, or the mobs in this game's auras, are like vanilla mechanics, but I don't think it should affect the magic damage, because I believe concentration, even if it was the vanilla aura, would only buff the magic damage of Blessed Hammer. So that was just kind of scaring me for a second, but that doesn't happen. And there are also poison spinners, so that room wouldn't have been that dangerous. But what I wanted to show about this map is my new style of playing summons on is this. I want to be ahead of my Valkyries and behind my decoys. And as you also notice, I don't always summon decoys. I do like to try to summon them in front of me, as I will at some points. At this point in the map, though, as you can see, I was actually leading the team. Now, why is that? Here's a little example. I'm going into a pretty big room. I actually casted slow movement. There's no new Valkyries on the screen. I am just casting amp, and there I'm at the middle. I'm going to cast my decoys. So why do I want to be ahead of my Valkyries and my Merc? Valkyries are just the dumbest fucking summon in the game. Like, decoys are dumb, but at least they don't move. Valkyries move, and let me tell you, they do not accomplish anything very well. They're the dumbest summon I've experienced ever. I hope we can fix their AI and maybe decoys a bit. Don't give your hopes up on that, guys, but maybe next season they could be a little smarter. That would be so amazing, because I think they are actually a super interesting summon the way they are designed. Like right here, I slowed down a little bit because there's going to be a fanaticism mob, but not that much. Now, how am I able to play this fast? As I was complaining about in my last video, is I don't have a lot of defense, and I think defense is actually an S+ tier stat at this point. Well, my frame data is better, my life is better for not having very good gear. I have basically plain skillers, 212 FHRs, and the rest of like a little bit of strength, and that's it. Well, I do get more life per Vite point, and yes, although my defense is low, my movement speed is incredibly fast. Of course, I've got the dodge and evade, which sure, that helps quite a bit, but it's slow movement. By running fast and then positioning myself to cast slow movement, and of course my summons, I can play this build aggressively and be safe. And that's what I've always tried to tell people with Necromancer. Be aggressive. Be ahead of your summons. Lead the pack, okay? And then use your curses, or in this case, slow movement, to protect yourself at that point. One of the coolest things about decoys is you can place them where you need them as you enter rooms. Like, you don't need to place them right away, okay? So just think about that if you're playing this class. I think there's a way to play it faster, and I think Harmony is like a just necessary item for this build. I never want to give it up until I go like full-on teleport, power strike, Valkyrie build. Now, as you saw by my skill points, I am still running I completely dropped all of my extra points in the Penetrate, but I have a few extra points in the Crit Strike. I had 3 or 4. Now, that was before we learned that Crit Strike does not affect decoys. Does that mean Crit Strike is bad? No, because Valkyries can have insanely high base damage based on their weapon spawns. Now, this is one of my gear changes. As you saw, I have a +3 glove. I have a 4-socket Witch Wild, but I have ignore target defense on my crossbow bolts, and that is very, very, very nice. As you could see, I was proccing amp way more, and it's not just by time on my attack speed. Now, for anyone wondering about that last IS breakpoint, I brought this up very quickly in the last video. As you can see, you go from taking 16 frames to taking 17 frames. Now, again, frames are important, but I think 16 to 17 is like a 7% decrease, and so it's not necessary. You should definitely focus on FCR, and I wish my FCR was higher, but again, my gear really isn't that great. But I think this shows that you can push this build even without aura support to a pretty fast level just by being aggressive, because Valkyries are actually that powerful of a summon. They're just unfortunately super fucking stupid. Now, one of the other things that changed is yes, my Merc gear is much better than it was in the other video. I finally dropped the IK set, and I went to a more traditional DPS Merc set. I have the G-Face, which is insane, the Gore Rider boots, the String of Ears just because it was the best option I had. Laying of Hands are actually super OP for Mercs, especially with the nerf to Dracula's Grasp, and then I've got Leviathan, which is solid. Now, my Deadly Strike is low, but my Crushing Blow is capped. Now, as you can see, I'm running Leviathan, which is one of the best Merc armors in the game for safety. It's that or Shaft Stop. I think Shaft Stop is probably better, but they're both very, very good. Now, this is what I thought when I was making this. I'm like, you know what? Let me just look at the steel carapace I have. By the way, thank you, Top Plug. It's an amazing steel carapace. I want to use it at some point. If I put on this Tooth Throw, my Deadly Strike goes way up, but my damage reduction goes down. That wasn't what I was worried about. I was worried about the defense. And in fact, I didn't even change the rune to a Thul rune. And my Merc never died after I made this change. I actually promise. Defense is that good of a stat, guys. Okay? So just think about that when you play this game. There's other ways to go fast. Alright, speaking of faster, what the fuck is this? I promised you guys some updated information on all summons, including Necromancer. Now, Deadly Strike does not work on summons. That is correct. Every single summon in the game does not benefit from it, besides Valkyries, I know, funny, Iron Golem, and Skeleton Archer. You may have remembered I updated my grade of physical summons based on the changes to Deadly Strike. Not completely true, because it was partly due to the changes of Crushing Blow Splashing, which makes Uduars complete monsters. But even if Deadly Strike just affects archers, as you can see by the numbers posted on this table, the base damage of a 55 level Skeleton Archer with a 57 Skeleton Mastery will be 1,528. After you add all of their ED from all relative sources of 677, they get a total damage of 10,344. You add a Blessed Aim Deadly Strike chance at skill level 22 of 16% to crit 1.5 times damage. That's a 24% buff. That's over 8 archers. That's an additional 2,500 damage. And if you're running Brand, it's actually over an additional 2,500 damage over 14 archers. Alright, Skelly King out. GG.
Come and play with us, Daddy.